Hey, this is SportsSlaw with Lomas Brown, the pro.
And Deb Schneider, I'm the prof. And together, we're the pro and the prof.
So Deb, you want to?
I think we're already recording.
Oh, hey. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, everyone out there. Hey, Deb, how are you?
Welcome to SportsSlaw.
I know that's a different way of starting it off. We normally have our theme music and everything, and it kind of cues me up. As you've seen, the big fella was on his phone typing away. So it was so lovely to see you, Deb. It seems like it's been so long since we did a podcast together. So I'm so excited, man. I'm ready. I'm ready to debate with you today now.
Okay, we are debating today. See if you and I can disagree. We were just talking about the fact that you and I are so similar. I'm the female version of Lomas Brown.
She is, everyone. I mean, if you all knew all the similarities, you all would agree with her that she is the female version. So if you're the female version of Lomas, then I must be the male version of Deb Snyder.
Oh, you know what? The only thing I can tell you is that's a really, really scary thought. If you knew what went on up here.
Yeah. So Deb, I have a question for the American people out there.
Sure.
You know, you sent me on the quest. You and our intern extraordinaire Hunter sent me on a quest throughout my house. And I went to find a lamp. And, you know, Deb, that was like, I mean, I had a difficult time trying to find a lamp. And I'm wondering how many people out there really have lamps in their house, you know, nowadays with all this new technology and, you know, lights being put in the you know, the roof and all these LEDs and all these different things. I wonder who has the old fashioned lamp. You know, and this is the only one I could find in the house today, Deb. This was it. This was it.
You know, that's an interesting question because I was trying to do, and I'm like, okay, do I get a TikTok light and one of those little TikTok rings, or which is a fairly new thing. I mean, TikTok's, you know, brand new. Then I went on the search for I've got some lamps, but the lamps don't provide the light the way TikTok.
Right.
It is amazing when you really think about it from a video perspective, how good some of these things are now. People are filming on phones. People are filming with, you know, they've got TikTok lights, they've got rings, all this stuff. I'm finding an old-fashioned desk lamp. Actually, this desk lamp might possibly be older than me.
That's funny.
I remember having them in college. You know, you had your desk lamp. How about reading in bed anymore? Reading in the dark?
I know. I mean, reading. Period. I mean, yes. You know. I mean, exactly right. Yep, and people just. They're so used to getting news. I mean, news is right there for you right now, you know, So it's so much, you're bombarded with so much stuff now. It's so much content out there, so much to read, so much to view. So it's a lot of different stuff out there. And, you know, and quite frankly, if we even look at our games, let's look at how social media has changed the game. I was watching the USFL, one of the games, and a guy was actually Facebook Live. He Facebook Live a tackle that he made. It was unbelievable. And I'm like, Deb, I have no idea. I don't know whether it was something that maybe the team set up, or this guy might have had his cell phone out there on the field, but it was amazing to me. He went live during the game tackling someone. And I'm like, wow, the game has really changed. Now, we knew that all these companies, these media companies, of course, with their drones, and they want people right into the action. And you can actually see cameramen on the field following players, you know, to get that up close personal relationship. But I never thought, Deb, I would see it to where they would be Facebooking live, or it'd be live going through a game where a guy would actually be making a tackle. So, I mean, this is taking on a whole new world of its own.
You know what? I remember 20 years ago, we'll just go with that. When I was with Championship Auto Racing teams, and we were looking at putting cameras in the cars. Now it's just, every Indy race, every race, you're in the car. That was a big deal.
Yes. Yes.
That was a huge deal to have the cameras in the car. And now it's like, oh yeah, I've got my cell phone, I'm video this. Or do we let people into events with cameras even? But if it's not an event, I agree with you. The broadcasters are winning out. But by the same token, the broadcast is also, the NFL just negotiated the largest broadcast, package. And we're looking at streaming. We're looking at the regular television. We're looking at some of the, other social media. All of that is now part of a broadcast package. So are they really losing? They're making more money than they ever have before.
That's true. I completely agree with you. That is true, that they are making more money, and they're making it's because of these networks. Like you said, they're paying these enormous amount of deals. You look at Amazon, they want the Thursday night game, so they paid to get that. So you're right about that. But again, like you're saying, now doesn't you think it put the onus on? I think it kind of puts the onus on these clubs, on these teams, on these owners to keep giving the fans the experience that they deserve. I mean, as we know, ticket prices, they're continuously going up. Food concession prices, parking prices, everything is going up. Nothing's coming back down. So it's making it hard for the American family to enjoy some of these live sporting events. So, again, TV is, and I know they want to keep this harmony because the excitement of the game, the crowd being there, the roar of the game, the enthusiasm of the fans getting together, the tailgating, what that brings to the local economy. The local economy, when people come in, it's a lot of things outside of that game that gets affected by that game. So, again, I know I'm quite sure that's something that the networks, the owners, the league, they have to talk about. Don't you think even before they strike a deal, do you think that's something that they bring up? How do they keep the harmony going, or how do they keep this revenue pit just coming and coming and coming?
Actually, I don't think they talk that much about it.
Really?
I think it's a big piece, but I think a lot of these media deals are made with the economics of the team or the NFL in mind, not necessarily the economics of the parking attendants or the restaurants around, or any of those other myriad of other people who make money because there's an influx of 20,000 fans who are there. So I think it's a little bit of a competition. We need to keep it. We need to keep it fresh. We need to keep it interesting. Jerry Jones has been great with those huge jumbotrons, and then you go to the game and you end up watching TV basically, anyways.
Right.
But I'm not sure that there's a lot of thought for that, and we see it with moving stadiums. We see it. It's an economic event, and the economic event, the only economics that are really, really important to the team or the NFL or the league are the economics for the league.
Yeah.
It's almost like water. You move it, you do something else. Another parking attendant's going to make money, another tailgate, it's all going to work.
Yeah. It's amazing to me, again, how the social media platform now is really becoming so prevalent in this. I mean, again, we talked about Amazon, even though that's really not a social media platform, but we talked about how Amazon has gotten in the game. You talk about YouTube now. doing certain things, carrying certain games. So I could see it expanding more and more, and I could see the competition growing outside of, like I say, outside of the live games, outside of the participation of fans going to the games. I could see that the competition growing more and more between, like you say, these networks and these teams. Should be a nice, healthy competition. And competition, like you say, is always good. We look for it in sports,
right?
Because it's always good. It's going to bring out the best in you when you have competition.
Well, you absolutely want to see it. And I mean, our Hunter's pointing out that broadcast crews were paid during the off season. Don't want to lose those broadcast crews because they have lamps.
Yeah.
And then how much Cleveland's leisure economy lost $48 million when LeBron left.
Yeah, that was a big deal. The type of money he had influence or had influx into that Cleveland community. So you're right, that was a big deal, and it's a big deal. So they're going to that. It's a big deal when stars move on. You can see that because again, they affect the local economic impact that they bring to that, and they also affect people coming in to watch them play. So it's it's almost like a trickle down effect when you lose an athlete of a LeBron James stature to a community or to a state or to a city.
I think that's a really good point. I also think, and I know we talked a little earlier about how sports are a leader in a lot of ways. And right now, we've got the mass shootings. We've got a lot of things happening. And when you see how important one person is, LeBron leaving $48 million, to the Cleveland economy, you start realizing how influential sporting figures, particular sporting figures, teams are to an economy. I'm sure we could look at this and we could look at any team that left. St. Louis Rams is now LA Rams. What happened to what happens when a team leaves? But how important do you, a question for you, you're a professional, you've been a professional. How influential do you think sports figures actually are in what I'm going to call real world? Do you think that that the team, can do something about let's face it, the world's messed up right now.
It really is, Deb. I mean, there's so much going on, and I put it this way: it's so much that was out of our control. The pandemic, being shut in, all the things that had to go into that, virtual, being basically a virtual country for the last couple of years. A lot of things went into that. And I just think with sports, I think sports was the one thing that during the pandemic, during the shutdown, was the one thing when we were having sports that kind of took everybody's mind away from some of their problems that they're having. And like you pointed out, one of our biggest problems now is the violence. It's the gun violence that is going on in America right now with our youth. That's scary because these kids, they're getting younger and younger. I mean, you look at some of the sad things that have happened in Texas and, and Carolina and
Buffalo.
In Buffalo. And these kids, 22 years old, 18 years old, those are kids. So what's troubling to me and what should be troubling to the society is what 18-year-old has that many problems or that deeply rooted problem to where they go out and buy weapons to destroy other humans. What is that bad? What's going on in their life that bad to make them get to the point to where they flip and do something so heinous? It was those kids. I keep going back to that, Deb, and I'm having a hard time personally because my wife is. My wife is a parapro at a middle school. She works with 10-year-old, 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds. She works with that group, that age group of kids. And she can't watch TV. She can't listen to the stories of what went on because emotionally it affects her. I remember her telling me, she said, those kids are just so innocent. You just wouldn't believe how innocent those kids are at that age right there. And that's what keeps going through her mind, and for him to do what he did. So to me, again, interaction. I just think us as athletes, I think people put us up on such a pedestal, fair or unfair. They put us up on this pedestal. They expect a lot out of the athletes. They look at the athletes to influence, to be influential in their society. So to me, until the athletes take a stand, just like they was talking about with social injustice, just like the teams were doing that, just like individuals when they came up with all these different social justice causes and way endowments to give money to. Until we do this for this violence and protecting our youth, I don't think things are going to change. I actually think they'll be honest with you, it's going to get worse because we got so many people that want to follow the wrong things, want to be copycats and follow the wrong things. I don't think unless we put up a stand, unless the NFL, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, unless they take this serious, soccer, all the sport, until they take it serious enough, just like some of these Democrats that want different laws changed for gun safety, I don't think anything's going to happen positive, Dev. I only see negative coming down the line.
Well, I think there's a group that it's easy to follow. And so if one person, and then you talk about social media. So of course we're going to follow because we see it all the time. It's where you started. We see it. So we talk about replacement theory, and then we have, somebody says, oh, I'm going to make a name for myself and do this. I'm going to do that. I think one of the interesting things is, can sports, I know there, we've had summits before. Can sports change the world? It certainly has taken a long time between Colin Kaepernick kneeling and, the Black Lives Matter. I mean, it took 4 years. It took, and a lot of it's political. We know a lot of it's political. Sports and politics are intertwined, have been, and will continually be intertwined. But does that give sports, and I'm talking about all sports, and it could be, if Serena Williams says something, if LeBron James says something, if Colin Kaepernick, if Lomas Brown, if athletes, current and former, various sports all get together and say something, will that make a difference?
I mean, I think it can. I think it can make a difference. I think it can make a difference. I think Colin Kaepernick would have made a difference if the message wasn't hijacked. Okay, if the 48th wouldn't have hijacked the message, I think that would have made a difference. I think if they wanted to make a difference, and when I say they, I talk about owners, because that's where it's going to start at, Deb. That's where it's going to start at. A quick example, I do diversity work, and anytime we go to a corporation and we talk to them about incorporating diversity and inclusion into their foundational piece of their corporation, unless the owner signs off, it's not going to work. It never does. It never has. It never will. The owner we have to get that buy-in from the top people, and then it trickles down. If that doesn't happen, then I don't think the needle gets moved on anything. And I put everything into that category. So to me, the owners have to step out their comfort zone. This has to be something that makes them uncomfortable enough to step out their comfort zone, get all those 32 owners. And I'm strictly talking about the NFL, but of course we know the other sports. Get those 32 individuals in a room where they said that we're going to make a change. We're going to make sure that we make a change in this world. And it starts with the National Football League, or it starts with the National Basketball Association. But until that happens, until the top people sign off there, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen in any corporation, and it doesn't happen with anything that you're trying to implement or you're trying to get moved if the top people don't sign off.
Yeah, I would agree, although I will also, because we're debating a little bit.
That's a debate. Yes.
I would say that there are certain figures who could lead a movement by getting, I mean, if you had Tom Brady, if you had LeBron James, if you had, you pulled some figures, major figures who have big followings. And a lot of these guys have social media followings. I mean, they all do. If they got up there and said, we've got to do something, would they mobilize?
Well, I would go one step farther. If those guys went up to the owners, if they went up to the prospective owners of their teams, I think we could get things moving in the right direction. I mean, think about it. Those guys that you just mentioned, those are world movers. If they went to their owners, if they went to their commissioners in the different leagues, I think they could get things done right. I mean, most of these guys have hundreds of thousands to millions of followers, and that would help. But again, Deb, all the followers, not good people. I mean, everybody that's following them, not good people, So again, that's why I think what the influence of the player has to be prominent. It has to be prominent, and they got to make sure that they understand the message. They got to make sure they understand the cause too, because you don't want any misinformation put out there. You want to make sure everybody's on the same accord, following the same guidelines too.
Right. And one of the things that we've talked about is we're seeing more and more politics in sports.
Yes.
We're seeing it with name, image, likeness, and sometimes it's congressional, and sometimes it's the judicial branch. I mean, remembering that we have 3 different branches: executive, because I'm going to be a prof here, executive, judicial, legislative, and we're seeing Congress was trying to do something, for instance, with name, image, likeness, and lots of bills pending, but nothing happened. And it turns out that the Supreme Court was the one who changed the world on that. We saw, back in '98, we saw the Curt Flood Act. Years after the whole Curt Flood and the reserve system and everything, that act of the legislature, and Curt Flood was there when it was signed by the president. So we're seeing more and more of this. Do you think that politics and sports should be so intertwined, or should they be separate?
Right now, I feel like to get things moving, I always felt that it shouldn't have been intertwined. I thought sports was sports, politics was politics, and they should have stayed clear of each other. But I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel that way because of what's going on in our political world, how we got Democrats and we got Republicans fighting. And Deb, to be honest with you, what they're fighting about. They're fighting about power. They're fighting about control. They're trying to control the seats. They're not fighting about us, the American people, who they're supposed to be fighting about. They're fighting about, they got their own individual agendas out there that they're fighting about. That's why this gun safety of these gun laws, that they want to use that each side wants to use that as kind of like they're okay, you got to give me this and I'll give you this, you know, and it's wrong. We got kids dying, we got people dying out here, but yet instead we got the people that we voted in that's supposed to be for the people, by the people. They're not for us people, you know, they're for themselves or the people that look like them. And when I say look like them, I'm talking about economically look like them in that same, because it seems like everything's being driven by economics first. That's the first piece they look at. Then the politics may come in there. You may throw a little religion in there. You may throw a little this in there, bipartisan in there. You may throw a little something to everything. But I'm telling you, the main thing in there is the money and the power. That's where it starts at to me. So to me, if Congress could get things moving, then I'm all for them to get involved in things. And I want to spit when I say that, because I never felt that way before, but now I'm feeling that way because it seems like everything is a standstill. Like you said with Colin Kaepernick, why did it take that long? Why has it taken that long for something that he did positively, which they hijacked and turned into a negative? But why has it taken that long for people to realize, oh, wait a minute, this guy was doing something positive. That was something he was standing up for positively. Why is it taking that long? And to me, if Congress gets involved, then I think it'll move faster.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting if you look at the history of sports and Congress. I mean, we're going to go all the way back to the early 1900s, and we're going to be talking about the fact that, you know, we had integrated sports, then we basically had segregated sports, and we went back to integrated sports, and we celebrate Jackie Robinson and Kenny Williams and, you know, as integrators. But in essence, it was just after a period of non-integration. We see history kind of repeating itself, if you will. And a lot of it, you're right. A lot of it comes from the owners and what the owners and the leagues are willing to do, what they're going to do.
Right.
I think that's, you know, that's an interesting thing. I want to look at some of the things that the league is doing now. I think the NFL right now is a really fascinating place. And keep in mind, in all of this, in everything that we're saying, the NFL is still the most successful.
Yeah.
Although I do think that some of these, how do I say it? The broadcast of the games, especially in baseball on Apple TV or on some of these other streaming services, is going to lose some fans.
Oh yeah.
So do you guys watch, I don't know how often you guys watch Tigers games, but do you guys have cable and do you watch it on Bally Sports, like the old Fox Sports Detroit?
See, I lost it. My channel, my cable stopped carrying the Tigers for some, and like you saying now, Hunter, I think it's like you saying it's all Bally. Because I used to be able to get it on regular cable, but now I don't know what went on with. I think it was DirecTV or something. But yeah, you know, unless I'm with Bally, I can't watch them or the Pistons like I used to. So yeah, it has kind of affected the way I watch them now.
And Deb,
talking about things that you don't have any longer.
Yes.
Well, the interesting thing about that is Bally Sports, I believe, normally should be on the general cable package. It should be attached to. But the Boston Red Sox, I forget the name of their local TV provider, but they just struck a deal. They are now no longer on cable. They're a $35 a month streaming service. And that's how you get like, if you live in the Boston area and you're watching Red Sox games, you now have to pay for that streaming. So, and they're the first team that's really done that on a local broadcast. I'm sure the Yankees might be doing that next. Yes. I know they make a ton of money off their local TV streams, but that's going to be a really interesting thing to look at going forward, because I'm sure MLB teams are going to start to replicate that.
Yeah, not just them. I could see the SEC network. I could see the Big Ten network. I could see some of these networks. If they see that's a way of them generating more revenue, I could see a lot of them going that way. Hunter, I kind of like, and Deb, I kind of like the situation that ESPN has on. So, Hunter, you see that they are a cable network station, but they do own Channel 7. So as you can see, the NBA Finals, they'll broadcast them on the free network on Channel 7 instead of doing it on the ESPN paid channel, which I like that. I like that ESPN is doing that. And of course, they're a huge sports entity, media outlet. So they can afford to do that. I don't know if everyone can. I bet everyone could, but I do like that scenario where they are a paid full cable, but they do have the network channel 7 or ABC, where they can broadcast some of because the finals should be out there for everybody to watch. You shouldn't have to pay to watch the finals. That's something that you should be able to watch for free. The Super Bowl, that should be something you should be able to watch for free. Playoff games, all those things are something that the American public should be able to enjoy.
Absolutely. And, that kind of goes to, is this how we're trying to get people to attend? Because they have to pay to see it anyways. So why not come to the game? It's kind of it's an interesting back and forth. It really is, to see how we're changing broadcast. And I think that also goes to how broadcast has changed. It used to be radio, and then it got to be TV, and we had 3 channels. And now we have streaming, and we have these different cable companies, and we have, it's difficult for somebody who just wants to watch a game sometimes.
Yeah.
So why not go to the game?
Yeah. True. That is true. I mean, again, Deb, they seem like they're trying to price people out. I mean, my goodness. I mean, I was in LA when the Lions played LA, and I think I told you guys this. It was $250 to park your car. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, what? It was $250 to park close by the stadium. Now it went up to $1,000 for the Super Bowl. I can understand you raising it for the Super Bowl, but regular game, $250 to park your car.
How do you bring a family of 4 to a game like that? What do you do? I mean,
what can you do, Deb? I mean,
you
it's
can't buy hot dogs and.
Thank you. Don't forget, we got to get tickets. It's just it's crazy, the prices, and they're not going down. It's not like they're gonna say, okay, let's lower it. That's not going to happen. If anything, it's gonna go up.
Every sport needs bleachers.
Yeah. How much I need to get parking. No, go ahead, Hunter.
How much money do these places make off of the price gouging that happens with the concessions inside the arena?
Well, Hunter, that's a great question, and I would like to throw that at our resident lawyer right there. Deb, that's a great question from Hunter. Price gouging. I always hear the attorney general saying, no, we won't have none of that. That's not going to go on. We're going to protect the American people. So gas, you can't price gouge, food, this and that. But like Hunter say, what about price gouging at these sporting events? Because a lot of that go on.
Well, you say it's price gouging because it costs more inside a stadium, right? Mm-hmm. So you're assuming it's price gouging. But remember, the rent or the license to be able to be in that stadium mm-hmm. is going to cost more. So in order to make any money, and a lot of times I think that would be the real question, is how much does it actually cost you to be in that stadium? Because a part of that is marketing. I mean, if you go to Little Caesars, we have the Little Caesars Arena, and you have it at the stadium, maybe also you'll be having it at home because this was the stadium food, or ballpark franks. I mean, they played on the whole ballpark franks type of thing. So I don't know that it's what we as the public might say is price gouging. I don't know that it necessarily is price gouging, as opposed to really an economic formula so that you can be there.
But but we know, don't we get the numbers at the end of the year? Don't they say what these teams profit? I mean, don't we get the numbers of, well, this team made so and so?
Right, but this is not the team. This is the independent contractor who is licensing a place in that stadium.
So you're saying that's who? So the stadium.
So it's not the team that's necessarily setting those prices.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business saying, hey, I have to pay this to be in the stadium, and we've got taxes, and we've got stadium fees, and we've got this, and we've got that. So this is how I can make money. And by the way, let's get the youth hockey team to come in and volunteer to, sell all the hot dogs. So we don't have labor costs.
Yeah, man, that seems to be a lot there. That seems to be a lot.
It's all economics.
That seems to be a lot.
I want to very quickly turn to a couple of things that are happening in the courts. So we have 3 huge pieces of litigation with the NFL. And I have the pro here. So we have Gruden, we have Flores, and we have Watson. Gruden Gruden and Flores are pretty interesting cases, and very somewhat similar, because the NFL is trying to arbitrate those. And then we also have in the background here the whole Washington Commanders and Dan Snyder.
Yes.
We're talking about Goodell. We're talking about the court system. We're talking about how much sports and politics and courts and all that are intertwined. But when you look at Gruden, where you have the leaked emails, and he sued the NFL. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, was it March 25th, that there was a court case, and they asked for a motion to dismiss, and Gruden won. Gruden won, and it's probably going to be appealed. I think it is going to be appealed. Yeah. But the point was that the NFL was saying we should be able to arbitrate this. And what that in essence means would be that Gruden has sued the NFL. The NFL then has an NFL employee deciding whether or not this case has merit. It's not in any of the coaches' contracts. It's generally, when you have arbitration, it's an employee, like a player, and a team, and the NFL, which is all part of the CBA, collective bargaining agreement. This is in a coach's contract. This is a completely different thing. I believe also a lot of the emails that were leaked were pre-Gruden being an NFL employee.
Yeah, it was when he was with ESPN. Absolutely.
Right. And Flores, again, a very similar type of thing, same kind of motion, arbitration with the NFL, even though he's suing the NFL, not the particular teams. What do you think about that? As should the NFL be part of this arbitration? Should these things go to arbitration if they're against the NFL?
I think it should go to arbitration.
Arbitration with the NFL, though, as the NFL is the arbitrator.
Well, I mean, again, I could kind of see why that's happened. If you remember, with that last CBA, Roger Goodell was the judge, jury, and executioner. So he, so it was basically one person making all the decisions. And that didn't go over well, even though the players, for some reason, I don't know why they voted that in like that, but they voted that in. And again, when you had the Ray Rice situation come up, the first thing that came up, and he got such lesser time for what he did, that kind of struck a nerve with a lot of people. And again, some of the subsequent things that the commissioner had to vote on, some of the disciplinary things that he had to do with some of these players. And then I think it got to the point where they were like, wait a minute, now, how can this guy listen to the case? How can he judge the case? And how can he make the subsequent punishment of it? So, Deb, I don't know. I think this might be something to the point where they're kind of, wait a minute, we don't want to put the commissioner under this type of situation where he has to do all this again. We want to bring in, make sure that this is arbitrated, because that wasn't a word that was being used before now, because it wasn't no arbitration. You could, but again, that's probably the same people that were hearing your arbitration case were voting or were judging that case. So it didn't make any sense.
And I think that's exactly what the NFL is asking for, with a slight difference here. When you have the Ray Rice and all that, it was the player and the team. In this case, and the team discipline or whatever, I believe. But here we're having the NFL. They're suing the NFL. And the NFL is then saying, let me decide.
Yes. Now, Deb, could that have something with the civil part of it, the civil prospect of it? Do you think that could have something? And that's probably some of the reason why they're trying to do it this way. Absolutely. I mean, because I know Coach Gruden. I spoke with him, like I told you, and I know he told me that they are out to get me. So if a person knows that someone is out to get you, then what you do is you protect yourself civilly against them. And I'm quite sure that's either he has that in the work.
Sure, absolutely. But think about this. So we go to discovery, and this is going to hit hit Snyder.
Yes. Because
he worked for him, and who's the leaker? Where's the leak?
But Deb, he seems to be like Teflon Don, man. Snyder. Oh my God. Hunter, what else has to happen in your organization under your watch for them to consider what's Donald Sterling, making him get rid of that team? What else has that? Think about what he's done against women, racism, just go across the board.
Yeah, Dan Snyder, the guy is just truly a terrible person. And I don't know what is going to happen at this point, because so many horrible things have come out. So many things have happened that you're thinking like, all right, this will be the one that gets him. And it is never the one that gets him. I mean, maybe here, if the Gruden lawsuit continues to go on and they need to find a fall guy, I'm sure Goodell would have no problem making Snyder that fall guy, but that's a pretty powerful fall guy to have. I'm not sure Snyder would like that himself.
I got a quick question on that. Deb, do you think by Snyder being in DC, do you think that's part of the reason why he's kind of Teflon Don? Say if that team was any other team that's not in the DC area around all those political figures, do you think that has anything to do with it?
That's an interesting question, and you've caught me completely unawares on that one. I'm trying to come up with a good answer for it. Partially, probably because you have a lot of fans, and we don't want to see change. I think also it's been somewhat difficult to prove. We're trying to prove something. I think also, and this goes back to society, I think our moral compass is, as a society, our moral compass is just different than it was 4 or 5 years ago, even. So some of the things that would have been never, it wouldn't have happened, and something would have stopped. I mean, I go back to, some of the political scandals where Donna Rice sat on, someone's lap, or some of the things that happened. And now it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, right.
That's fine. You had an affair. Okay, go for it. Would Monica Lewinsky have been such a big deal nowadays? So our moral compass in the country has shifted, and that could be part of it also. So there's a lot of things. It's never any one thing, in my opinion, but it's an interesting question as to where the tipping point will be, to quote Malcolm Gladwell.
I like the quote.
Thank you.
Deb, I had one question for you about the difference between John Gruden's lawsuit and Brian Flores' lawsuit, because John Gruden, he filed against the NFL in November, and the league obviously immediately tried to get it to arbitration. All the clauses in their contracts, it's like force it behind closed doors. Gruden's lawyers countered that the arbitration clause can't apply because when he filed the suit, he wasn't head coach of the Raiders. How come the arbitration clause is applying for Brian Flores when Brian Flores was not an NFL head coach when he filed his suit either? So I was a little bit confused about that, and I was curious if you had the answer for that.
I think the NFL is trying. It could be different courts are allowing that. It could be that he was Flores, I believe, had been coaching, and he was. I think he might be a little closer to it, and maybe the contract that he had, the coaching contract that he had, might be a little different. I guess the answer is I'd really have to look at the documents.
Yeah, I'm sure Gruden had, because Gruden had that 10-year, $100 million contract, whereas I didn't know exactly what Flores got when he was initially hired, but I'm sure his contract was.
And it may have been that they agreed to it.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they did. I was curious.
Because, and what arbitration are we talking about? Because I don't think that, when you're having the NFL arbitrating its own cases, that's one thing. But going to arbitration, what would be a normal arbitration, which, Lomas, is what you were talking about, is a different thing. So if we're going to a normal arbitration with a neutral arbitrator, why not?
Yeah.
Two different animals. I mean, we're using the same term, but it's really very different. Yeah.
And just a little bit on that, Brian Flores. I do, Hunter. I think I kind of think the Hugh Jackson, I kind of think that hurt him a little bit. I know what Hugh and them were trying to do, but it just seems like, either he didn't have all his facts straight or he embellished a little bit what went on in Cleveland. And I think that kind of hurt Brian a little bit because, he was one of the ones that I think he joined in. I don't know if he's still in now because I know Hugh has gotten another job. I think he has a job at HBCU with an HBCU school now. I think he's a head coach with one of them. But I do think, if everything he said was true, I think he would have helped Brian. I think from the standpoint, and I hope not. I just think from the standpoint of, them finding holes in what Hugh Jackson said about what went on in Cleveland, as far as them trying to pay him to lose games and some of these other things. They're finding out that it may not be true or it may not be what it's saying. I really think that kind of hurt the coach from, not that it's his fault, Brian Flores' fault, but I do think it kind of hurt the coach a little bit, with this.
Yeah, you've got to be solid in all these cases, and you've got to have there's an awful lot that happens behind the scenes, and you're telling a story. You're trying to tell a story. So, every time I read a brief, I'm like, oh, yeah, they should win. And then I read the other side. I'm like, oh, absolutely, they should win. If you've got a good lawyer, they're a storyteller.
Yeah.
And you start the story in the complaint. You've got to read those complaints. So. So we've talked about a lot of different things. Final thoughts on any of this, Lomas? I mean, we've gone from lamps to arbitration.
Yes, we have, Deb. Again, so I hate to get a little solemn, but I'm telling you, my thoughts are with what's going on with all this violence out here. It's just, and I think because of me having a 21-year-old daughter, a 22-year-old son, me having grandkids, it's just sad to see how young these kids are being influenced by the wrong thing. You see so many shootings that go on. We talk about the mass shootings that get all this, but just over this past weekend, 15 dead, 60 something people shot. That's crazy nationally. That's just crazy that happened in a day or two span. And it's getting worse and worse. And as we know, when the summer months get here, violence seems to pick up. The hotter it gets, the more the violence picks up. So if we look at things, we're just on the tipping point of this being something catastrophic. This is just really bad. So again, we need our athletes. We need our active athletes to please get involved. Us former guys, we could get involved too. But those guys that are active now, they have a voice. They have the platform. We need you guys more and more today.
I think that's Hunter. Anything?
Yeah, I agree with Lomas. Just prayers for Uvalde, prayers for there's just been a lot of horrible things going on in the world, and my heart's with all the families, all the victims, with everything going on. So just prayers for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to all of our sports figures to get involved.
Yes.
Do something, because you are the role models.
That's right.
You are the role models. And, we can just go through, I hate to be saying, Oxford, Buffalo, Uvalde. What is it? Philadelphia. It's awful. It's just awful. We have an epidemic, and we have to treat it as such.
I agree. I agree, Dale. Treat it as an epidemic, because that's what it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So with that, let's sign off SportsSlaw. I want to give a shout out to our sister podcast, the Remember When podcast, which is all about reminiscing with J.U. Callcraft. And, check us out on SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and send us your thoughts. Love to hear them. Thanks.
Thanks.